Here's the latest. Everyone knows it. Obviously, Ohtani to the Dodgers, surprise. We talked about it on Friday. It was an inevitability. It happens. And you see her $700 million, say, wow, that's really going to impact our ability to spend long term. Or will it? As what's being reported now at this hour by ESPN and The Athletic is that $68 million per year of Shohei Ohtani's contract, 68 of the 70 is deferred, giving the Dodgers more payroll flexibility for the next 10 years. He will be paid $2 million per year to give the Dodgers flexibility. The CBT hit, right, that luxury tax hit, is $46 million, which is a big number, but it's not $70 million. So the Dodgers, who have all the advantages in the world, every single one of them, largest market in the country or top two, every advantage in the possible world, they get an additional advantage today. They're able to sign Shohei Ohtani and pay him $2 million a year for the next 10 years. So they have flexibility because they need it. Give me a break. That's a joke. You got mad yesterday about this. I didn't know about this. This deferment thing is a complete joke, and it's going to be changing the way the contracts are written for eternity until someone deals with it.
Can we go back in time and defer like all of Manny Machado's contract and Fernando Tatis Jr.'s contract and Xander Bogaerts' contract? Because if that were the case, then I think Juan Soto would still be here right now. If you had a cap hit instead of $30 million a year for Manny and Tatis and $26 million a year for Xander Bogaerts and $20 million a year for Joe Musgrove, why couldn't we now have just like a $15 million cap hit for Manny and like a $12 million cap hit for Tatis and like maybe like another $12 million cap hit for Xander Bogaerts? If that were the case, I mean, look, we're going to get into it about the whole notion that oh, this is good for baseball from a lot of national reporters out there. This right here, I'm sorry, you can't tell me this is good for baseball when a team that is just flowing with money, Brinks trucks galore, even without Shohei Ohtani, they were still going to make a boatload of money because they're the Dodgers. And now you give them even a better opportunity to win. I don't know, Darnay. To me, this whole thing feels shady. I don't know how any of the owners in baseball could approve this. Like, if Peter Seidler was still here, I mean, he'd be losing his freaking mind right now, I think. Like, this is an absolute joke for the sport to allow this to happen. And that's not just because it's the Dodgers. Like, it's because, well, I guess it is partly because of the Dodgers, but at the same time, it just feels like this should not happen, and it's dirty.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. I did see an interesting note from Bob Nightingale. Part of the benefit for Ohtani deferring $680 million is if he no longer lives in California, he's not subject to California state taxes, which we know to be fairly significant. And so this isn't going to make anybody feel any better about the situation. But part of, I guess, the motivation for having so much of the money on the back end is to do that. And you're right. I just this doesn't seem like something that can continue. And if we are using this as a model for future agreements, future contracts, that could be problematic. And it wouldn't surprise me if that became a trend, if it was something that Major League Baseball said, hey guys, like let's rein it in a little bit. I'm really curious where the number 46 comes from, and maybe there's some simple math that I'm not doing, but how they landed on that as the AAV, because if it's 700 over 20 years, it's 46 is the number.
It helps with their CBT, and them deferring all this money pretty much is a loophole for them to avoid any tax thresholds.
No, I get it. Just how it ended up being 46.
Yeah, I agree with you. You're right. This is simple math. To your point, the Machado deal, to Jim's point, 350 over 11 divided up. There's your AAV. Your average annual value was 350 divided by 11, whatever that number is. Yet this 30. Deal is 700 divided by 10, and I'm a math guy. You guys aren't, but we can all do it. It's 70. That's simple math. If someone told me it was 69, I'd be like, okay, whatever. But I mean, it should be should be $70 million per year in terms of a CBT hit. It's as simple as that. You have opened a huge Pandora's box with allowing something like this to occur. Because how can you unwind this? If you allow the Dodgers to do this, isn't that what the Yankees are going to try to do with Yamamoto? Isn't this what the Giants are going to try to do with Snell? Isn't this what the Padres should have tried to do with their previous deals. And I'm with what Jim said earlier. Like, I'm sick of this is good for baseball. And again, like, I understand when the Padres were spending, we were all for it. I was a proponent of spending, and I'm fine with the Dodgers spending. This is the way the sport works. If you want to spend, go spend. But they don't need every advantage given to them in the world to help offset spending. The Padres didn't get that advantage, and I was told it was unsustainable because they didn't have those advantages. Now the Dodgers, who have all the resources in the world to allow sustainability, get this benefit. That's bogus to me. It really is. Until we find out more about it, that just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. But at the same time, Jeff Passan tweeting out just moments ago,
okay,
which kind of makes me now upset with the Padres a little bit, saying, quote, for anyone wondering if MLB will challenge or cancel Ohtani's contract, the answer is unequivocally no.
Okay.
There is a specific article in the collective bargaining agreement that addresses this, and it's very clear deferred money is limitless. Article XVI. Does anybody know what that is?
That would be 16, Jim.
Okay. Says there shall be no limitations on either the amount of deferred compensation or the percentage of total compensation attributable to deferred compensation for which a uniform player's contract may provide. It's a lot of words there put together. Basically says
it's like
that,
a sentence when you put words together.
Yeah, I know. That's crazy how that thing works. But basically, the Dodgers and Ohtani found a loophole. It upsets you because you're like, why didn't your team find that loophole? Because if that's the case, then why aren't teams spending a boatload of money on free agents, but just deferring everything? So then you don't get the tax hit. You get to stay under the CBT. And basically, forever how long that contract is, you just pocket that money, put it away, and you can pay them it. It frustrates me. Because it's the Dodgers, and you're like, wait a second, why aren't other teams doing this? Because I feel like, Darnay, if the Padres did something like this, where they signed Manny and Bogarts and Joe and Darvish and all these players and deferred all this money to stay under the CBT, you don't think that other players or other teams around the sport would be calling this into question, and we get articles written up about how like the Padres can't do this? Like, I feel like we would.
It just seems to make sense that the CBT hit value, whatever, shouldn't, like, the math shouldn't go beyond the length of the contract. Yeah. And so to John's point, it's 10 years.
Right.
And maybe there's a little wiggle room. Maybe it's 12 or
right.
I think if I'm not even getting into math, but if you sign for 10 years for this amount of money, isn't that the average annual value that he is a Los Angeles Dodger? It's a lot to kind of wrap your head around. I'm trying to do that now, and we're getting this information real time. And so, it's confusing. But now if you're AJ Preller, do you say, hey, Blake Snell, you want to sign a 5-year deal with a bunch of it deferred? And so or to Michael Wacha or Seth Lugo, like, hey, you're not going to get all of it up front, but you're going to get taken care of long term, and it's going to be done in such a way that it helps us stay within the threshold and stay at a sustainable number.
This should be opened up. Yeah. I mean, this is a complete slippery slope, Pandora's box, whatever cliche you want to use. Because once a team takes advantage of something like this, every team is going to try to take advantage of this. And you really, what you're basically doing, I mean, let's be fair. I mean, I think this is fair to say. The sport doesn't have a cap. We all recognize it. There are disadvantages to going over the threshold because you get taxed, right? So, okay. So that keeps people within a number. A couple of teams have blown by it, like the New York Mets. But by and large, teams don't blow by it. Some teams go over it slightly because they're taxed on it. And that's how it works. But when you allow teams to work around the tax, there's already no cap. And now you're incentivizing teams to even go further than they went previously without a cap. That cannot be good for the sport. They're like, it's already hard enough for the Pittsburghs and the Milwaukees, and you could argue San Diego moving forward. Again, they've been on both sides here. So you could argue the merits when it comes to the Padres. And I didn't complain when the Padres were spending, but I felt as if the Padres were playing by the rules. When the Dodgers are spending like this and now using loopholes, and I do think it's fair to say that, to their advantage, they're spending more in deferred money than the A's are spending on their team next year. Now, maybe that's, again, an overgeneralization, but this is utter stupidity to allow a team the ability to defer $680 million. I mean, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. No team has ever spent $680 million on one player and all the money gets deferred. It doesn't make any sense. And they need to explain why it should make sense. Otherwise, it just feels like the rich are only getting richer. It's hard enough to compete in Market 27. The Padres have done everything in their power to do it, and they should be commended for the way they've spent over the last 3 or 4 years. But you're going to make it harder now? It's going to be harder now for San Diego because LA and New York can use deferred money to their advantage. That to me that's a big problem for Major League Baseball. It really is.
Blake Snell hasn't signed. Cody Bellinger hasn't signed. Yamamoto, Lee. I'm sure there's a bunch of, Waka, Lugo, like a lot of guys haven't signed. It's going to be fascinating to see who sees this and says, okay, let's do something along those lines. Now, it's not going to be $700 million.
Sure.
But I'm really curious, like, who sees this, the structure of this contract and the way the money's been manipulated and says, okay, let's do a smaller version of that to land a guy that we maybe thought was out of our price range, but by doing this, we can get him at a more comfortable number. I think it's really interesting, given that it's happening at this point after winter meetings that, other than Juan Soto and now Shohei Ohtani, was kind of a drag. Not a whole lot happened, and there's a lot of dominoes left to fall. I want to see which ambitious team says, okay, I see you, and I, not raise you, because nobody's going to raise $700 million, but I'm going to follow suit and use that kind of structure to my benefit and see if this kind of becomes a trend this offseason going forward.
Yeah, it just makes me frustrated how, if this was a rule this whole time that was stuck in the collective bargaining agreement, why have no teams done this? Maybe it's the players. Maybe the players are like, I don't want all this money deferred, but at the same time, it just doesn't make sense how we're just now finding out about how this can be done. Because all of these deals, it seems like if you want to make sure you're under that, CBT, which is this dreaded term in baseball that all teams are trying to do, then why not be able to manipulate all of these contracts like the Dodgers did with Shohei?
It's one thing, okay, to your point, it's one thing to manipulate contracts. Why have we seen long deals? Because they're lowering AAVs.
Correct.
And baseball, by the way, has spoken out about that publicly in the last 1 or 2 off seasons, saying, we're not going to allow 22-year deals, right? We're not going to allow 26-year deals to lower AAVs. So there's a threshold there. We've seen 13s, we've seen 12s, we've seen 11s, we've seen 10s. Okay. So that's a stretch. Like if someone would have told me that Ohtani signs a 15-year deal for $700 million, but he's only going to play another 10 years, say, okay, they're fudging the math a little bit. Now it's 700 divided by 15. That's where you get closer to that 46 number. But to pay him $2 million to give you literal cash flexibility in the short term and defer that kind of money is going beyond what teams have done with the AAV. The way even the Padres have done it. Why are you giving Yu Darvish 7 years? Why are you giving Machado and Bogarts 10, 11 years? You want that AAV number down. But now the Dodgers don't even have to do that. They get the benefits of both. AAV numbers down to $46 million, and they don't have to pay this dude for 10 years.
Is part of my anger with this right now? Well, most of it, because I hate the Dodgers so much. Yeah, probably. Right?
No, but it's stupid.
But at the same time, I feel like every fan now should be like, with their team, hey, if you're the Royals, why can't you go out and sign Blake Snell to this big contract and just defer all of it, right? So the AAV goes down, and you don't get a CBT hit, and you're not giving Blake Snell literally like 70% of your total payroll every single year for the next however many years Blake Snell signs his contracts for, right? Like that's the biggest thing is we talk about in the next couple years, Musgrove and Darvish and Manny, Xander, and Tatis make up about what? Around over $100 million of the Padres' total I guess, payroll each year. And if you deferred all that, you could have had that down to like 50 million for 5 players per year, right? But they're still all making that money eventually. I don't know, man. It's a weird situation. I don't like it because it feels dirty. It feels like it shouldn't be allowed, but of course it is, because baseball just can't ever get out of its own way, and they can never have a system that actually works to benefit all of their Major League Baseball teams instead of only benefiting really a couple, which is a joke for your sport. To literally have a sport where only 4 teams essentially can do any of this. Like, you can't. The Royals can never do this. The Marlins can never do this. The Pirates, the A's, of course. Like, none of these teams are ever going to be able to do this, except for the Dodgers and the Yankees and the Mets.
The Red Sox, exactly.
The Red Sox, teams that have money. It's a good way for your sport to get very diluted very quickly, and honestly, it really has, and that's why the media praising this so much really bothered me, because you should be praising teams like the Padres for doing this, teams that are small market. If they go out and sign big players, good. We want those teams to be elevated, not, suppressed down to the bottom half, because all we want to see is Dodgers and Yankees and Mets teams in the playoffs.
Darnay, thoughts? Additional ones? It does. It's just frustrating. I mean, is it crying over spilled milk? I mean, obviously you'd take it if you were the Padres, but this does seem dirty.
I think it's fair to be frustrated, again, like you said, and Darren and I spoke about it a little bit, just the general reaction when it comes to the Padres, and based on even before today and the details came out, how it was received. There is a difference, and you can say whatever you want about where the Dodgers are at financially compared to where the Padres are. We know there's a big difference. But I think people being aggressive and spending should be celebrated, just period, end of sentence. And I think, I don't know about you guys, when I saw the 700 number, I thought, wow, like that's wild. But hey, they can pull it off, good on them. I didn't necessarily besmirch the Dodgers for doing that. But now when the details come out, it seems, I was definitely curious about the math, and now the math does seem curious. And so it's really, really interesting. And I'm just curious where this goes. And if you see other teams follow suit, the Scott Boras number for Jung-Hoo Lee, 90 million. There's a lot of people saying, too rich for my blood. Well, is it? Can you figure out a way to make that 90 million work where it's maybe spread out beyond 5 years? I don't know. And also maybe the timing of it a bit frustrating when you just parted with Juan Soto because you knew you probably weren't going to be able to keep him around long term. And maybe there's no way that the math could have ever worked for Juan Soto in a Padres uniform. And maybe AJ Preller knew that something like this was possible and he looked into it. But if not, and if this is really kind of a groundbreaking deal and opening people's eyes to how they can kind of make the math benefit them, then, if you're the Padres, would you want to rewind a week or so and maybe keep Juan Soto around and try and manipulate things in such a way that he's able to stay here long term on a more palatable number? I don't know. Maybe there's no way that it would work, but that's where it makes me a little bit curious about that outcome.
It also feels like this, that like it's the players that are the best in the sport that have more of the opportunities to defer money. I mean, players on rookie deals or first time free agents aren't interested in deferring money. Of course, Juan Soto could defer money. He's made $30 million in arbitration, or he's due that this year. He's got sponsorship deals. Of course, a lot of these players at the top, like Trout, Shohei Ohtani, could defer money. So it only benefits those in large markets that are willing to want to take on these players and have the resources to do it. It to me is something that it's one thing for Ohtani to land with the Dodgers. That can happen. We all realize it. It's another thing for them to land him in the manner in which they've gotten him and the way that they're going to mess with the numbers to make this all work. That to me is a whole different conversation than him just ending up with the Dodgers.
That's right. He's an overpaid.
It's okay. He's just a DH. So Kyle Higashioka, Higgy, as Jim's been calling him, is making more next year than Shohei Ohtani. And there's a zillion examples of it. He's owed like $2.13 million. Or whatever the number is, he's owed over $2 million. This is a problem. And it sounds like because we're in San Diego and this has to do with the Dodgers, we're crying over spilled milk. I made the argument last night on the wrap-up show that I understand the Dodgers landing Shohei Ohtani. Padres spent a lot. It doesn't guarantee winning. I think it makes it easier to win. It doesn't guarantee winning. Padres have spent. I'm all for it. Dodgers are able to spend. Yankees are able to spend. We understand that. But it's one thing to allow spending. It's another thing to allow spending to allow them to spend more. Which is what this deal is. This is the deal that puts them in position to go sign a Yamamoto or a Snell or a whomever, Jung-Hoo Lee. And by the way, don't think that after this deal gets approved by Major League Baseball, other teams or the Dodgers themselves aren't thinking, if we did it with him, we'll do it with Yamamoto.
So I've had a little more time to think about it, as in like 5 minutes.
Okay.
My mind is immediately going to the Padres and thinking to myself, so if you can literally defer all of this money, Soto could still be here then, in my mind. Like,
yes.
Like if I'm, and I'm not good at math and I'm not good at the CBT and all these numbers, because to me, I like to talk about the games, not about the boring CBT stuff.
Oh, I love CBT talk.
But if this is the case, if you can sign a guy to a $500 million contract and defer $480 million of it, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Then how is Juan Soto? How could the Padres not just have re-signed Juan Soto? How could these teams not do this? Is it because the Padres literally don't think they're going to have $480 million in the next 10 years to give?
Yeah, but who even cares?
I know.
Because who's even running the team then? By the way, this whole, like, it was, Ohtani will defer the money. All these players, and would Machado do the same thing? Would Tatis do the same? I mean, if it benefited the organization, players that have made hundreds of millions of dollars, Machado specifically, why wouldn't Manny Machado, if offered that opportunity to take a majority of the 350 later to put the Padres in a better position? He's got unlimited resources. Does he need the 350 now as opposed to later?
So then now my shift is non like, hey, Manny, bro, what the hell, man?
Yeah, but did anyone even really consider this? Like,
I don't know.
The Trevor Rosenthal deal. Did you mention that in the first segment?
Oh, no, but I thought of it.
So Trevor Rosenthal, former closer of the Padres, got the $10 million from the A's, which was $1 million for 10 years.
Yeah.
And it was deferred, and people laughed at it. And it was one deal, one $10 million contract. And nobody thought much of it. But did that kind of pave the way? Have the A's in their spending and how they've used money?
Yeah.
Have they, paved the way? Now, because this isn't the first deal with deferred money, is my point.
Yeah. Now here is the also thinking part too. If you deferred Manny's and Xander's contract, then you're paying $1 billion in 10 years to two players.
Yeah, but who cares? You know what I mean? That's always our theory on it. Are you thinking about 2034 payments coming due? This is Brent's credit card. It's like if you got a 20,000 limit, you can max it out and you just pay the minimum. And at some point, you're going to have to worry about it, but not now. And that's what the Dodgers are doing today. So why can't other teams do that? And the Padres literally have had to move hell and earth to make this payroll work. They just moved the top 5 hitter in the game to make this payroll work. And they didn't have to because they could have paid him $2 million a year for the next 10 years and figured it out later.
So this is from, who is this? So Darnay liked it from a guy named.
Thank you, Darnay, for producing.
Yeah. Guy from Sports Info Journal. He says, basically, to summarize, the total value of the present deal, the present value of the whole deal for Shohei Ohtani is $437 million.
That's because the money in the future is worth less than it is today.
He said the present value of each $68 million is $41 million. Add that to the $2 million, and the CBT hit each year is $43.7 million.
But it's 46.
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
There's a lot of numbers here.
Yeah, there's a lot of numbers. I'm not overly worried about the numbers. I'm worried about why this is allowed and what the implications are for teams like the Padres, the Dodgers, and the other 28.
I'm just happy that the Dodgers now have a fighting chance here.
It's true.
That the Dodgers now get that opportunity to go out and build a better roster and actually compete for once.
But remember, the Padres had to get back into the debt ratio with Major League Baseball. Gosh forbid they're outside of that.
Yeah.
But the Dodgers, they're not outside debt ratio with $700 million in spending in the future. That's cool. They've got it in the bank.
Look, taking my feelings away, how I dislike the Dodgers a great deal. I just despise them as a fan. I just despise everything with the Dodgers.
Oh, I thought you liked them.
No, I don't.
Okay.
Not even close. If I'm looking at it from just a general fan perspective with no allegiance, no hate, no nothing, this is kind of pretty baller.
No, I disagree.
But
I completely disagree. The flack the Padres would have caught on this.
No,
now we would say,
but I am that is my saying. If I had no allegiance anywhere,
no, I still disagree because I don't think it's good for the sport. Which is though everyone always makes that argument about baseball. This isn't good for the sport. No cap. It's hard to win. This is making it harder to win, isn't it? Is this not making it harder to win that the Dodgers now have more resources to throw at their payroll after the Ohtani deal?
This is what I'm thinking now. I'm thinking because of this, any team in baseball could sign anybody now and just defer all that money. And that's what they should do. But teams are too scared to do it because a lot of these owners in baseball care about their pocketbooks more than they do about the product on the field.
But the deferred money part of the conversation might change it. If I own the Brewers today and I signed Ohtani to a 10-year deal and I sell that team in 5 years, the next owner's problem and my franchise valuation just went up twofold.
Yeah.
I just got Shohei Ohtani. So I don't think this has to do with other organizations being scared. I think this is the Dodgers and Ohtani and his representation taking advantage of a loophole. That's how I see it.
Well, it's actually, it's technically not even a loophole.
It's a loophole because nobody's doing this with contracts until now. That's the loophole. The loophole is the other sports already have more of a, more parity because of payroll. We've talked about that for forever. I'm okay with the way baseball is structured with there not being a cap. The union doesn't want a cap. But this is making it even harder to win is my point. It's already hard enough in the bottom half of Major League Baseball. This has just made it, I'm not saying impossible, but a lot harder. That's how I see it. Let's go to the phones, 844-570-1360. What do you guys say?
What is happening right now?
844-570-1360. Joe, you're on with Jon and Jim. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, how's it going, Jon and Jim?
What up, man?
Hey, I called you guys last week and made a comment about Gary Sanchez and Higgy, and I was giving, Jim his credit where credit was due.
Thank you.
So I don't think we need to really worry about the whole Ohtani deal because what I'm kind of thinking is what's going to happen because I'm seeing people in the comments talking about it. What's going to happen if Ohtani does sustain an injury? Does he get paid all this money? What happens?
Yeah, no, 100%. It's guaranteed because it's baseball. Yeah, it's absolutely guaranteed.
At the end of the day, in 10 years' time,
he's getting it.
He will have accumulated a total of $700 million from the Dodgers, one way or another.
Yeah, not in 10 years' time, in 20 years' time. He's owed it by 10 years after the completion of the deal.
Now it will be taxed to death. Like it's going to be taxed like a
Darnay
mother.
Just made the point that if he doesn't reside in the state of California, it won't be taxed as the same as if.
That's right. Yeah,
so there's all these advantages. They're going to parse through this whole thing. I mean, it's listen. The Ohtani thing, we said it last night on the wrap-up show, and thank you, Joey. From a Padres perspective, it's like get your own house in order. You can't worry about the Dodgers and the way they're putting together their roster unless they're doing things that could also benefit you potentially. But it's like, man, it's hard enough to win in this division and put some of that on Preller. They haven't fielded competitive rosters over the last 10 years, a lot of that. But now it's like, how are you supposed to compete in this division with the Dodgers if they've got Freeman, Betts, Ohtani, and it doesn't cost them a dime on Ohtani for the next 10 years?
This feels like when a quarterback, or like they restructure their deals, or like any player in the NFL, when they restructure their deals to make sure that they go into the cap.
Right.
They can sign another player.
Sure.
And we applaud that. But it's always, it's a different type of animal when you're talking about, $10 million deferred or restructuring of a deal.
Restructuring isn't deferred, right? Like, so if Brady took, I forget what he did at the end in Tampa. He took a very low amount, right?
Very low
$1 million
to help the team.
To help the team. Okay, admirable. But he wasn't getting money on the back end.
So no, I know.
Right?
But
that's what he got.
But
if someone told me Ohtani got a $2 million deal, you'd say that's fishy, but that's what he's getting.
But would you, if we're praising people in the NFL for restructuring their deals to help the team out like Brady did, shouldn't there be this level of Well, Ohtani's doing this to help the team out, to make sure that the team can be better built instead of just going 10 years, $770 million per year, CBT, cap, all the luxury tax stuff, the massive hits. Like Ohtani's, well, I don't think this is Ohtani's idea. Actually, I 100% don't think it's Ohtani's idea because Andrew Friedman is very smart and their agents are very smart.
Sure.
But if Shohei signed off on this, if this was presented, I'm sure this was presented to Shohei.
Course.
And he has to sign off on it. Hey, buddy, you're going to make $20 million in the next 10 years. Are you good with that? But in turn, it's going to help our team so much to help build a winner for you, help build a winner and winning pieces around you for the next 10 years. And if he's yeah, I want to do that because I want to help the team, shouldn't that also be maybe praised a little bit?
Well, I don't buy that he's the only player in baseball that would do it. And what the Dodgers are doing here is so revolutionary, and it takes Ohtani's willingness to do it for this to occur. I feel like this could have been occurring for the last 10 years, but has not been for one reason or another.
How about this? Counterpoint.
Okay, we need to break. But yeah, why don't you counterpoint on the other side?
Okay, all right.
Counterpoint from Jim on the other side, plus more of your reaction. Are you cool with this? If it was the Padres, you'd be cool with this? This is where baseball's heading. You're okay with deferred money?
It helps the team.
Soto gets $600, but he's only getting paid $6 million from the Yankees because it helps the Yankees win long term. Are we okay with that? I mean, is this yelling at clouds stuff? Am I going to be yelling about this at 3 a.m. in Seoul for the opener between the Padres and the Dodgers in 3 months? What a joke! He's making $2 million, he's making less than Higgy.
Now, it would be one thing if the I guess cap hit or whatever we're calling it, every CBT hit. Right now the CBT hit for Machado every year is $30 million, correct?
I think that's right. It might be 32.
Okay. If the CBT hit for every year for Ohtani with the Dodgers was $2 million is what he's making, then I would lose my freaking mind.
Right.
Then I would be like, this is an absolute joke. All right.
But shouldn't it?
But it's not. It's
70?
40. It's 40. It should be 70, but it's not 70. And if it is and he's making $2 million a year, so then you're like, wait, it should be $2 million a year. It's actually 43, 45, $46 million a year.
Machado's is 350 divided by 11. That's the number the Padres are paying CBT wise. So that's the number.
So then my question is, was there ever, this is what my counterpoint was.
Mm-hmm.
Was there ever a discussion with Manny about potentially deferring money to help the team keep certain players and or go out and sign players to help them win? If there was ever a discussion about that and Manny said no, he does not want to defer any money, then I'm pissed.
Well, he's let me explain for 1 second, because this happens all the time in baseball. He kind of is deferring in the front half to give the Padres payroll flexibility. I mean, cash in the bank flexibility. For example, Machado's deal that pays him $350 literally pays him $13 a year the first 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
He gets a majority of it on the back end. This is very typical of a long deal with a star. Tatis is similar, right? First couple of years, pay him, we'd have to look, right? 5, then 10. Eventually it gets to 20 and 30 or more $1 million. Same thing with Machado. Machado will be paid next year by the Padres $13 million. That's what he's actually paid. Therefore, they have more cash for their roster. But the cap hit for the Padres next year is $32 million, even though he's making 13.
Okay. So
I'm saying he kind of did that, as in,
yeah.
Did they call him and say, hey, do you want to defer? Or is this so revolutionary? Boom.
Ohtani's deferring 97% of the deal.
That shouldn't be allowed, is my point.
That's
if someone said, here's the deal, you can defer 18%. There's a max. Hey, 20% of deals can be deferred. Okay. Then he deferred 20%. He's deferring 97%. I mean, no, it's non-relatable. For everyone listening right now, if you make $50K, if you make $20 an hour, if you make $100K, are you going to defer $97,000 of the $100,000 you make until later?
No, you're going to.
It's not relatable.
No, it's not. Because Shohei makes so much money off of his other endorsement deals, and by being in LA, and by being, the number one sporting draw in all of Japan,
sure, and
by being on a lot of national television next year, probably the most of any team in baseball will be the Dodgers. Okay. Postseason, all that stuff, jersey sales. he don't need the money. Like he's
Of
gonna
course
get
not.
all the money in the world, and he's already richer than rich. But to me now, John, like you mentioned the word, and at the start of the show with Darnay, Pandora's box has now been opened. If teams don't start doing this, I'm pissed if I'm a fan of that team.
Right.
If teams do not start signing players to massive deals and deferring money, and maybe it has everything to do with the player agreeing to it or not. I think it does. I'm not quite 100% sure.
The player has to. Oh, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, the player has to do it. Agree to it. Do most players want to defer 97% of their salary?
Probably not. That's my point. Is like Shohei is doing this
because he's a billionaire.
Because he's already a billionaire, and he wants to win now, and he wants to make sure the Dodgers have the best chance. And he's never won, so he wants to make sure the Dodgers have the most flexibility to do it. But going forward, like, you know, the deferring of money, these players, if players truly want to win, and the high price players want to truly win, then deferring money should be the way to go now. Like, I better be seeing a lot of deferred money for a lot of these players going forward. The high price players that claim that they want to win bad, like a Manny
point.
and a Xander.
Well, what's Manny supposed to do? Go back in time? He signed a deal.
He couldn't, but maybe that's my whole thing. My question was it ever discussed to this level? Like what you said, I understand it all, kind of, not really. But was there ever a discussion like, hey, Manny, look, $350 million, but we want to keep Soto. We want to have flexibility every offseason. We want to stay under the CBT, which is the most important thing.
So let's defer 330.
If we can defer 300 of it, and you get $50 million over the next 10 years, this is going to give us this opportunity to do, you know, ABC. But I don't even know if that was discussion, and it should have been because it was actually right there in the rules the entire time.
By the way, do you see that going over well with Manny Machado?
Absolutely not, dude.
And it's not his fault. Nobody's really done this until today.
And he could have if he made his primary residency in, I don't know, like Miami, which he does have a home there.